everyone, thank you for tuning into my channel. Please don't forget to subscribe for new weekly videos. Today we're going to be making homemade pita bread. Are you ready to make this warm and fluffy bread? Let's get started. We're going to start off with 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast, and of the 1 cup of water, I'm going to add in 1/4 cup of that water just so we can mix in the yeast together. Now to mix this, you can use a fork or a whisk. I just give it a big swirl, and then I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of sugar so that we can get this yeast to really start activating. And now before we add in the flour, I'm going to add another 1/4 cup of that warm water into the mixing bowl and give it a big swirl one more time. And then we're going to add in 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, and then it's time for us to knead. Now if you don't have a stand mixer, you can use your dough whisk, the back of a wooden spoon, or even your hands. But you're going to pulse this on low a few times if you are using a stand mixer. Now after I've pulsed this a few times, I'm going to add in the water in small increments just to bring the dough together. You don't want to overwater it, otherwise you will need to add a little bit more flour, and that will adjust everything that you have put in as far as the ingredients. So just make sure you just put a little bit of water at a time until it slowly comes together. You want it to look tacky and sticky rather than shaggy and dry. See, it's a little too dry for me, so I'm going to add a little bit of water, about a teaspoon and a teaspoon and a half of water, and mix it all in. And it's still a little too dry. As you can see, it's still sticking to the bowl. I'm going to add a little bit more water and bring it all in. Now it's slowly coming together just the way I like it. So there's not much dough that's stuck to the bottom of the bowl where it's dry bits, and I'm just going to knead this until all of that dough is off the sides of the walls. Before turning the dough out, I am going to lightly flour my surface area so that when I'm kneading, the dough doesn't stick to my pastry board. I'm going to lightly flour the top and use my wrist to push the dough outwards and gently pull it in. If you haven't checked out my baguette tutorial, I do explain to you how to knead the dough, so please check that out when you do get a chance. The link will be at the end. So it's still a little tacky. I'm going to continue kneading. I'm going to add a little bit of flour as needed to make sure it's not sticking everywhere, but continue kneading until it is a very smooth texture. To help me round off the edges and close the seam, I am going to use my bench scraper to really push the dough in to close that seam on the bottom so that we're ready to rest it. So you can see it's slowly coming together and it isn't as sticky and tacky, and it's a lot smoother. So now I'm going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil into my bowl and then bring that dough back into the bowl and let it rest for about 30 minutes. I'm going to lightly flour my surface and divide and weigh my dough. Always work with the dough you first weighed, as it gives it time to relax and is easier to shape. Remove any flour if you notice the dough is not creating traction and closing the seam. To create the ball, we're going to gently flatten and bring all the sides in, creating the seam. And then we're going to flip it so the seam side is down and gently roll it to close that seam. The ball should form easily when rolling underneath your palm. So we're going to gently flatten and bring all the sides in, creating that seam. We're going to flip it over and gently roll it underneath our palm. Roll it in a circular motion, and that'll create the ball. And now you'll see that the seam is closed. I'm going to set this aside and continue working with the rest of the dough, remembering to work with the one that was most rested. Once I'm done, I'm going to move my dough balls onto a lined pan with flour on the towel to prevent it from sticking, and I'm going to cover it and rest it for 15 minutes. Now that our dough is rested and easier to work with, we're going to have the seam side up and gently flatten the surface. I'm going to dust my dough and my rolling pin, and I'm going to start from the middle and roll it down towards my body, and then in the middle again and roll it up. Then I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees and then do the same thing. Roll it from the middle down and then from the middle up. I'm going to repeat this until I get my desired circumference or until it's about 1/4 inch thick. Once I'm done rolling it out, I'm going to cover it and rest it and continue with the remaining dough balls. If you notice the dough is starting to stick to your rolling pin, just lightly flour it again and continue rolling it out. Flour it if necessary, but if you don't need it, you don't need to put any flour on. In the meantime, I'm going to preheat my oven with either a cast iron pan or a sheet pan turned upside down at 475. You're going to put the first dough that you had first rolled out into the oven and bake it for 5 minutes. And then when they start to puff up, you're going to flip them over and then bake it for another 3 to 5 minutes. I hope you enjoy this as much as we always do. Please don't forget to subscribe. I do add new videos each week, and I can't wait for you to see what's coming up next. Please drop a comment below or any suggestions you may have. I do love reading them. Share this video with your family and friends and enjoy this pita as a sandwich or in a dip. I can't wait for you to try this. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.